Hello and welcome back. Yes, this is my video on the Dinadan R.154, but I'm just doing a quick update on the Class 25 we saw a couple of weeks ago, and I indicated that it tended to lie over to one side because of an off-center pivot under the bogie here. A number of people had indicated they'd had similar issues right from new with the models, and David Atkins of Canada went to quite some trouble and produced a video showing me a quick fix that he'd developed to solve the problem, the lean on his Class 25 and his high mech. And I communicated with him a couple of messages, and he suggested if he was going to do it again, he would try a slightly different route, and I've sort of gone partially down that route. And I've got an effect where it largely sits level on the track now, but still there is quite a significant sort of float in the bogie frame on the metal block which sits in it, and then this in turn floats on that. But it does largely seem to run quite upright now. So if you just have a swift look at the footage there.
And off she goes. She does seem to sit upright quite nicely there. Sorry about some of the jumpy camera work. The phone seems to be switching between two cameras automatically. And if you notice when she's in the curve, she does lie over a little bit as she goes round, but then straightens straight back up again. Let's wait for the next curve. There we go. She's just tilting a little, then straightening up quite nicely. Tiniest a wobble on there, but I think she had a bit of a wobble before. And there we go, that little tilt again, and then she straightens up. So I think overall it's probably as good an effect as we're going to get without doing something a little bit more drastic, perhaps. There we go, a little tilt again, and then she straightens up.
So I think looking at the footage, it's a much more pleasing effect than it was before, just making this simple adjustment. If we just have a quick look here, and this is largely influenced from David Atkins' video and his comments. So if we just pop this open, we'll have a swift look before we look at the Dinadan. Just open there, and I have to warn you in advance, it's terribly low tech, and it involves a piece of balsa wood there, and I have put a self-tapping screw in there, but I had to cut the end off it to try and match the height of that off-center pivot. And then through fiddling around, I discovered that it was too short, so I put a blob of solder on it, and I don't know whether you can see that. I've then filed it down until it gives me the most pleasing effect, and that balsa wood is just an interference fit in there, so it can be taken straight out. I've just drilled a hole quite crudely through the balsa wood there, and it just sits in place, and it gives a nice overall effect, this balsa wood, and it doesn't need to go too far left or right, otherwise it interferes with these parts of the bogie frame there that sit in place. So I think that's it's given a pleasing effect. I don't think it's ever going to be truly fantastic. The pivot, or the play in that metal block sitting in the plastic bogie frame, and then the play in those wheels, coupled with the off-center bogie pivot, and then possibly with the torque and the effect of the motor pulling, and the difference in the way this bogie is mounted in the frame, I think it's always going to be a compromise thing. Although having said that, I have just got a Class 37 of the same period, and I believe it has the off-center bogie pivot. It suffers none of these problems. It seems to sit perfectly on the rails. Sorry about the colour temperature shifting all over the place there. So we'll just pop this to one side, find this rail, and then we'll have a quick look at the Dinadan. Excuse the noise there. There we go. Sort of mid-70s box. Southern Railways Class N15 locomotive and tender. Dinadan. Lovely black and white illustration there. Very, very, very simple. That tender's definitely from the L1 modified, I think. I think it's been in use many, many years. So box is fairly tatty. R.154 SR Loco Dinadan. You can see it's in fairly shabby condition. But I think it's sort of done its job. We'll just pop that down. We'll have a look at the 76 catalogue, the year she showed up. Now she was available between 76, 77 and into 78, and so fairly short production run. So a fairly tatty catalogue here. We'll just see if we can find the page. There's the price list as well. We'll just pop the price list to one side for a moment there. And she's featured quite heavily on this page here with this lovely piece of engineering drawing. So it's a new model for 76. So they say that the model was available through to 78. I believe early versions were gloss and later versions may have been in that sort of waxy plastic, which became popular at that point there. There we go, R.154. This new Hornby model features a simple coupling between locomotive and tender, overlapping foot plate, and magnesion for improved hauling power. I seem to be losing the power of speech this morning. So I just spotted some interesting photographs in the front end of this catalogue here of production of models. I think it might be quite nice to have a swift look at here and see lining being applied by hand and assembly of models. Some machinery in operation there, and spraying of models. This was becoming quite popular a bit later on. Models were swapping over from self-coloured plastic to spray paint finish. So you can see this catalogue is in very poor condition. So we'll just pop that down. Oh, one other thing I wanted to point out, if we have a swift look again at this page, we can see the Dinadan there, and there's no white line running along the lower edge of the tender there. And when we look at the model, we're going to find that does have a white line running on there. So perhaps this is a pre-production model. Certainly by the time she appeared in the 77 catalogue, I'll just reach over for that. She looks more like she does in the box. Where are we? There we go. Nice and glossy. And you can see we've got that second white line, or not second white line, but line mirroring the edge of the lining there along the lower plate on the tender there. So just have a quick look at those two images side by side. So we'll just pop those away, I think, and we'll have a quick look at the price list. Just pop those out over here to one side. Here's the 76 price list. It's got a date, 12th of January 1976, so early in the year. Prices may have changed throughout the year. We've got steam locomotives, and now we've got R.154 N15 class 460 Loco and tender Dinadan SR1. So perhaps I've expressed that correctly. It's a N15 class locomotive 460 Loco and tender Dinadan SR1, and its price there is £10.95. And we'll just pop that to one side. So we'll just ease her out of the box and have a swift look at her. No paperwork, sadly, with this model, although there's some interesting things sort of written on the box or the packaging. So we'll just pop that out. And we'll just lift off that face card. There's that lovely illustration there, and the model number, and what I can assume is a computer reference number, perhaps there. 9300, and nothing really printed on the back of that. And there she is. We'll get her out a little later and have a look over her. But she's definitely in fairly enjoyed condition, I think is the way to class it. She's definitely in good running order, but definitely been handled and used fairly extensively. So let's just have a look at the end of this and see some information has been written on here. The price down there of £8.70, and there's a date there, 25th of the 12th, 76. Stock is at 61. And there's a number, letters and numbers I don't fully understand there, but that's the number on the tender, isn't there? And SR 460. Quite interesting stuff. Maybe these numbers meant something to somebody at the time, and I believe there's some more information written on the inside flap of this box here. And again, that just mirrors it. That's the date there and the stock number there. So interesting to find these things written on boxes and packaging. I didn't realise that this number here, 460, was the wheel arrangement. It struck me like a bolt of lightning as I was switching the camera off. It was when I was reading it on the end of the cardboard flap just a moment ago. It had the two dots between the numbers. Of course, that's Southern Railways 460, isn't it? And that's the number on the tender, as I pointed out before. It didn't mean that to me when I was reading it before. So we got there in the end.
And there she goes. I think she's got a lovely sound. It's that of a much older model, I think, rather than one from the mid-1970s. Gentle stop there at points number 7. And we'll get her through onto the inside line. We're going to work around to the turntable and snap those shut behind her. And then a gentle stop at the signal box there just before points number 18. We'll snap those open along with number 17. And then we'll move gently through those and up onto the bridge, and we'll get her turned around. There she goes. And then we'll begin to rotate clockwise. Very noisy, the turntable, isn't it? Very rough when it's going over all those inlet tracks, and bumpy, but it does get the job done. Lovely looking thing, I think. Although I do need to hoover it. Look at all that dust lying there on the bed of the turntable. Time for some housekeeping, I think. And watch that bridge jump over those inlet and outlet track contacts. Very bumpy. There we go. And then smoothly off the bridge, back onto the track.
We'll just lift the locomotive out of the polystyrene package. And it's got to be sort of cab first to unhook the smoke deflector from the polystyrene cutout. You can see just in there, I'll point there. Fairly heavy old locomotive, fairly old technology. We've got traction magnet behind the rear drive wheel there, giving it magnadhesion. So that, along with the weight, it gives it pretty good pulling power. Although the plated drive wheels do detract a little from that. There's that very interesting drawbar. I'm not sure whether they use this system on any other models. I don't own one with this plastic drawbar, but maybe somebody could let me know. Got the collection plate down here, plastic drive gear, and there's that front bogie there, plated wheels on there too. Lovely painted centres, aren't they? Plenty of wear and tear there. So she has been around a bit. And if we look at the back here, we've got the crew glued safely in there. There's plenty of glue floating around on that footplate, isn't there? That footplate does overhang onto the tender, which is quite a nice feature. Plenty of cab detail in there too. I'm not entirely sure that's an original handrail. It does look a bit like a replacement to me. So cab roof fairly plain. And we can see some marking on the top of the boiler here, so she's either had something stuck to it or grazed under something in her life at some point. Plenty of separately fitted metal parts on the top here, whistles and safety valves and so on. Fairly distinctive looking. And if we look around the front, there is a little bit of marking on the boiler. Sorry, not on the boiler, on the smoke box door here. It's been covered over in either black paint or black ink at some point. And it looks like on the buffer beam here, there could have been provision for perhaps vacuum pipes being fitted. And got plastic buffer heads. Looking underneath here, we can see evidence of glue there. Perhaps that buffer head's been re-glued in at some point. Just pop that to one side there. Let's just look down the other side of the model. And the nameplate and this oval plate here are just the sticky labels, or metallized sticky labels. Let's see if we can get that in focus a little. They're quite pretty, aren't they? And these details picked out in the brass or gold coloured paint there. Really beautiful thing, I think, and it is probably the last in the line of probably true Triang or Triang Hornby locomotives. It's sort of old technology. I believe the tender wasn't big enough to get their new silver seal type motor, Ringfield motors in. Excuse my pronunciation there. So fairly impressive, I think. Very, very pretty thing. So we'll just pop her down, and we'll have a swift look at the tender. And just slot that back into the polystyrene. Excuse the awful noise there. And then we'll lift out the tender. And we were saying earlier that in this 76 catalogue here, the tender doesn't have that white line running along the bottom plate of the tender. But, in the 77 catalogue, you can see it shows up there. So perhaps a pre-production type model there, and a production model on show there. So I think I indicated earlier, I think this model, the tender, probably came over from the L1 and was used on the 2P, having the rivets removed from its side, I think. And it's since got closed axle boxes, and we've got these lovely plated wheels on the tender. And so they're silver seal style, aren't they? And we've got the green spokes. I think that's a lovely touch. It does run so much smoother than just having plastic wheels on the tender. That pin will just go into that plastic drawbar we saw. Very minimal detail there, and a fairly fine looking sort of coal load there. It is sort of slightly depressed, I think, a little bit there in the centre. So pretty little thing. Good detail, considering this probably dates back to the very early 60s, I imagine, with a few little modifications as time's gone on. And I think we can see some wording down here. We've got Hornby Railways down there, but it's sort of moulded into the plastic and it's sort of out of focus. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's sort of blurry in the mould. And now we've got built in Britain just down there. And again, let's just have a look at that. Hornby Railways, it's not really legible. I know I probably haven't got it in focus here, but it's a blurry moulding. But I don't know whether the mould's just not quite right, or it hasn't released right. So maybe they were better on better days. So I think that's quite a pretty tender. They've used it on a number of models. I've just removed the quite large securing screw from underneath the footplate here. Just runs straight through there and into the metal chassis block there, so there's quite a long way to travel. So we'll just pop that down for safekeeping. So the body is moulded in green plastic and largely sprayed up in black and then lacquered, and then the lining applied to it. Fairly impressive colour, I think. It's a number of separately fitted metal parts, and I'm not sure whether the model was sold with crew to start with. I'll have to check on that. Inside's fairly tidy. There's some sort of markings here and there. We've got the catalogue number, R.154, and another number after it, 010. I can get that made in Great Britain just in focus, can we? Let's get the light to pick it out. And then Hornby Railways. That's a much sharper impression than that on the underside of the tender, isn't it? And there's the odd glue mark here and there on it, especially there. I think I pointed that out before. Plastic buffer heads. And I believe the lining seems to have been touched up in various parts around the model. I suppose it's quite fragile and wears away with excess handling. So we'll pop that down. Have a swift look at the service sheet. I mentioned earlier it's probably one of the last true Triang models, really, even though it's in the Hornby Railways period, but it shares its chassis really with the B12 R150 and the Albert Hall R759. So it's got a lot of heritage back to the early 60s. You can see the service sheet covers all three models now. We've got that plastic drawbar arrangement there, and this rather impressive valve gear which is held into place with this screw and the plastic motion bracket there. So quite an elaborate affair, I think. Quite nice to have these service sheets. They are quite freely available on the internet. I'll leave a link in the description box where you can get hold of a number of these. They are very useful. So we'll just pop that down and we'll have a quick look over the chassis. There we go. Lovely plated wheels. Just have a quick look on the underside there. I know we've already seen the underside of the model. Fairly tidy condition. Quite a bit of wear on those cylinder blocks, and you can see they're just sticky labels straight onto black plastic. Block held in place with the screw there, and that screw holding the valve gear in place. It's quite heavy gauge metal, that, isn't it? And we've got the motion bracket there. Motor looks in fairly tidy condition, although it does seem to have had a sort of a makeshift bit of insulation there. Doesn't look terribly original. But, yeah, it does the job, it runs, so it probably doesn't need playing with at the moment. Plastic drive gear, I think we pointed that out before. So I'm not sure whether the motor's the original one for the model. It looks sort of in better condition than the rest of the model to my eyes. I've got that metal plate there extending the chassis outwards, and that would just plug into the underside of the model there, and the screw holds it in. Let's see if we can get that into focus there, the screw there. It's all fairly simple stuff really, but a great looking thing. I love the wheels being painted up in green like that as well for the spokes. Looks good on the Flying Scotsman as well, doesn't it? Very shiny, that valve gear, isn't it? So it is probably one of the last true Triang models. It's a great piece of kit, I think, is what we need to say about this. I'm just going to open up the 77 catalogue to page 29, and we've got Hornby's new range of regional style coaches here. We've got their southern coaches. We've got R.431 SR Composite and R.432 SR Brake third coach there, and a lovely green and gold livery. I'll just lift this up so we can have a closer look at the imagery. Just try and do that so we don't get too much glare on the catalogue. Rather impressive looking things there, aren't they? And if we just have a look at the text on the left hand side here, which goes with it. R431 and 432, modelled on the 58-foot bow-ended stock designed for express services in 1929 during the Maunsell regime of the Southern Railway. These coaches, in their olive green livery, were worked all over the Southern network and right through to places as far afield as Birkenhead Manchester and Newcastle. So they definitely got around a bit, it sounds, doesn't it? So we'll just pop the catalogue down. Now, the coaches as we see them here, from what I read, were available 77 to 79 in the way we see them today. But there are a number of other variants over the years. It's fairly complicated as usual, but if we just have a look here, in 1980 to 81, they were renumbered, and I believe originally the coaches I have, that we see today, are self-coloured plastic, and the plan had been to change them to a paint finish in this year in 1980, but from what I've read in Pat Hammond's book, they had so many of these models left over that they simply, I think, repackaged them and renumbered them for this year. And as stocks ran out, I think possibly later ones in this period may have been painted versions. But as you can see, there are variations on these coaches over the years, and a similar story for the brake coach as well. So fairly complicated set of changes, very subtle from the pictures in Pat Hammond's book. So we'll pop that to one side, have a swift look at the pricing for the model of that year. So this is effective date of 4th of July. I'll get that in the camera. Effective date 4th of July 77. So we'll go on to the back side of it there, of the price list. And we've got the Silver Seal coaches, and we're just looking down here for our R.431 and R.432 SR comp and SR brake, new that year. I think we've got a price of £2.85. So it's always quite interesting to see what these things cost at the time. It's a fairly fragile price list, almost translucent, the paper. So we'll just pop that to one side too. We'll have a swift look over the coaches in the boxes. So I've got two composites, and then I've got the brake. So we'll just have a swift look at these boxes. So we'll have a look at the ends there. R.431 SR composite, and we've got sticky labels onto the boxes here for the contents. And they're all in reasonably good condition. I don't think these models have seen too much action on the rails. The boxes are a little bit tatty here and there. I believe one of them's begun to split open along the bottom. We'll just have a look at the box for the brake coach there. You can see the sticky label. Originally, possibly these were printed with a model number on them, and they've been reused. Again, plenty of shelfware on these boxes. You can see where they've been around a little bit. It just looks like it's beginning to come away on the corner there. So I've just removed these coaches from the boxes, and having a look over them, you notice that the lining isn't consistent. Sometimes it's printed heavier than others. So if we just have a look at the side of that one, and then we'll look at the other side, that's significantly heavier, I think, on that side. Almost sort of like a smudged effect when you see these words printed along underneath the windows here. So plenty of detail on the coach. I think the roofs are quite pretty if we have a look at those. And the brake does have its own separate roof detail. So I'll just hold that up and have a look there. And just pop the brake down for a moment. We do have interior detail. Just see it. Let's see if we can get some of the shine off the glass there. That's better. You can see it a little bit through there. It is quite hidden through those tiny little windows. Lovely end detail, and I think this end part is shared on a number of these regional type coaches. And now we have the corridor side with the detail printed on the glazing unit there. So they've got lovely Silver Seal wheels, lovely free running. And again, the underframe detail, I think, is shared across many of the coaches of this period. Made in Great Britain, and then Hornby's name just tucked down there. So we'll just pop that one down. We'll just have a look at the lining differences in this one too. So again, fairly thick and heavy there, isn't it? And that one's fairly thick and heavy on the other side. So we'll pop that composite down, have a swift look over the brake. And again, there's quite a difference, I think, from this side
to the other side, and again that's gone very, very thick. So just, I think, in the way the tool was used, again, lovely bars on the window of this brake coach there. There's that great roof detail there, the periscopes there, I believe. Again, looks like sharing the same end detail as the composites. See if we can get those into focus. Here we go. And again, same underframe detail too. And I think, as I pointed out, looking at some of these regional coaches a week or two ago, they've got the plastic coupling hook there, or the D shape is plastic and the hook is still metal, so that absorbs some sort of the impact of rather rough coupling up that can tend to happen from time to time. So quite pretty things. I'm not quite sure that's olive green. It looks more like a dark green to me, although it is described as being olive green. And look at that, that's absolutely effortless there, away from the station, and that lovely sound of the Silver Seal wheels. Now, I did notice a mistake in the last section of the video about the coaches there. When we were looking at the spreadsheet, it had the word composite where it should have had the word brake. So all the items at the bottom half of the sheet were brake coaches, and there were composites at the top. Now we're going to go through 0.7 there, the double crossover, onto the outside line. Nicely through there, and we'll snap those shut. Build up a little pace now, and we'll negotiate the incline section. Slowing down just a touch, but she's not short of any power at all, especially with that magnesium and those Silver Seal wheels on the coaches. Not a problem for her at all. Now, I think that's probably it for this week. Again, it's hugely appreciated that you've watched, and if you look back again next time, we'll have something else from the range to look at. Goodbye now.